I'm certain it does. I'm going to rely on Robin since she did the roll call though.
Okay, so I'm going to assume we do have a quorum. We're going to go ahead and begin. We do have a vote today, and there just are a couple things as reminders that since this meeting is virtual, I want to remind everyone about our meeting together. As you know, all of our meetings are recorded. Thank you. All of our meetings are recorded. As we take votes, every person needs to be on camera. So later this in this meeting, we will be taking a vote. So I'd appreciate if everyone would be on camera at that time. We also highly encourage for everyone to be on camera so that we can have your input and engagement as a part of this process. If for any reason you have to step away, we would hold our vote until all members are fully present. And we do follow, as you all know, Robert's Rules of Order for that. I want to go ahead and get to our slide that has our agenda on it. I'm looking forward personally to our partner agency updates again. Those have seemed to bring about good, thoughtful questions and comments, and we'll have a progress update as well as, again, a vote on the surplus of tobacco settlement funds and the uses for that. I also want to say, in lieu of our executive director's report, I'd ask you to go to the website to visit the biennial report on the state plan of the Early Childhood Advisory Council. If someone can drop that into the chat, that would be really helpful for everyone. But instead of doing our executive report, I'm just going to refer everyone to that executive director, to that report as well. Our next slide is just a reminder, and what I appreciate about this slide is that it keeps us focused on the things that we say we're going to accomplish together. So if the team can pull that up. We're having some difficulties.
We are having some technical difficulty. That's why you see me looking over here. Our small but mighty team is working diligently to get it
Okay, no worries.
Dr. Cummings-Smith, how can I help you?
No, nothing at all. I'm just going to keep moving forward. I think this is the nature of the environment in which we live. Technology is your friend until it's not your friend and really throws havoc into everything that you do, right? So just as a reminder, our 3 priorities about what we are and what we're trying to accomplish together. One, promoting greater collaboration is key to the work of this office, and as members of this advisory, it is our responsibility to really step in and be thinking about alignment and coordination. Emphasis on quality and continuous improvement is another one of our key priorities, and to ensure that more children enter kindergarten prepared and ready for success. And so just thinking about those priorities is critical to how we orient ourselves as usual into these conversations. And I wanted to elevate that as well. Great. So we have our agenda. I've gone through the next slide. Which are our priorities. Yep. And then I'm going to turn it over to Amy now for the next slide on how our work as a state is really leading the way. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you. And I see that Dr. Bridges has joined us as well. Welcome.
Yes, and also I've been texting. Dr. White has joined us, but she's in person, so I think she's going to make a quick pivot. But there were only a handful of folks who were slated to come in person, so we made that decision to do all virtual because we've heard from you all. It is easier when we're sort of like using one venue. So at any rate, thank you, Dr. Cummings-Smith, and Robin, if you want to go ahead and get to the next slide. And as we planned for this meeting and worked with Dr. Cummings Smith, and we just cannot say enough about her continued leadership and support as we work to ensure that more children have a strong start. But this is a visual that should look familiar because it's a timeline of Kentucky's early childhood work, but we have refreshed it. Like we've refreshed a lot of work. We've refreshed the website, and we just call that continuous quality improvement. And so many of you all here as appointed advisory council members, but then also, if we have guests listening in, have been a part of making all of this happen. A couple things I want to point out about how Kentucky really has led the way. Again, before my time, when I was here in the office, I was out in the field, working with folks in Northern Kentucky and in Louisville and other places in the state. But, the early childhood profile, when we talk about that anywhere, states get so envious of us. Now, Dr. Berry, don't let your head get really big, but states get so envious of us. And but the other point that I want to just point out quickly, and we'll circle back to this when we do our progress updates for the preschool development grant. But if you'll notice in 2010, and Dr. Jason Gilbert had a pivotal role in this, but developing a consensus-driven definition for kindergarten readiness. That work was launched in Northern Kentucky and then really grew, made it to the state, and they really modeled a lot of the work that Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Helene Hart and United Way of Greater Cincinnati led. But why I bring that up is because right now, the Lieutenant Governor, as you all may remember, we heard this, I think it was in March that Dr. Amanda Ellis came and talked about how the Lieutenant Governor was convening an early childhood workforce early childhood work group to really define what Kentucky means by universal pre-K. And so it's just really interesting that, that's where we are. And it's critical work, as you know, because, we all want high quality, we want access for more children. And so, as you know, as we developed the implementation grant for preschool development, we ensured that that strategy was highlighted in the grant. And so Dr. Thomas will be talking more about that. Also, there are various members of that work group that are here today, and they can jump in. So one last point before I get carted off the stage is really just going back to the commitment we've made over the next couple years with this federal funding. And, we know that we're doing great work in Kentucky, and we know that everyone has the best interest of children and families. But we all know, we just know what the reality is, and that's 9 in 10 kids who start behind in kindergarten are still behind in 3rd grade. That's Kentucky specific data. And so what we, this office, this leadership team, this administration, what we committed to doing over the next 3 years was working together, investing together, and behaving differently than we ever have before to get different results. And so I just, how much money up at the top that Kentucky has secured over the years, but yet we've not been able to really change the trajectory. And here's our chance. We can do this, right? So Dr. Cummings Smith, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide unless there's anything here that you want to highlight.
No, I think that's good. Let's keep moving.
Okay, so then just quickly, you all have seen this slide. Kindergarten readiness matters. It's highly connected to third grade. So for the past 5 years, we've been flat, 51%. So next slide. So over the last couple years, through the support and leadership of Kentucky Center for Statistics, we convened a subgroup, the Data and Shared Accountability subgroup, to really dig in deeper and say why are we still flat? How do we change directions? And what we found is that there actually are more children that are prepared for kindergarten in 31% of school districts. They've seen improvements in overall rates among economically disadvantaged and among students with individualized education plans. This is data you all have seen before, and it also is on the website. Next slide. And on closer examination, what we found are these strategies really, and these investments in those communities: home visitation and high quality professional development, emphasis on prenatal to 3, early literacy, and best practice transition. Next slide.
And so given that backdrop, I think what's really important for us to continue to go back to as a part of our touchstone is, the importance of looking at our framework in this way: ready families, ready communities, and ready schools. And because we know that this framework is such a strong framework, it is guiding and is underpinning the work of the needs assessment and environmental scan. We know that when we have communities and schools working together at the local and state level, we can reach higher and stronger outcomes for children and their families, so that we can reverse that trend that you heard Amy talking about, with students entering in behind and staying behind. That has to be our laser-like focus. And I'm glad that we're grounding ourselves in that again in today's meeting, because so much is happening, yet this is really our focus as we do our work together. This environmental scan and the needs assessment will also be a part of the dashboard to drive us for our strategic plan improvement. So if you go to the next slide, there are a couple of ways in which, we will be looking at the updates from the strategic plan. We're going to take stock internally and externally, ensuring that we synthesize and revise and do crosswalks and integrate all of the data that is available to us, so that we can continue to be data-driven, data-focused in our decision-making. We know that the governor's office creates the best impact reports for us, and that keeps us prioritized and helps us remain deliberate and focused. The logic model that was included what also describes what success looks like, and how important it is to have an awareness of our inputs, outputs, our outcomes, and our vision for the Commonwealth. Again, the READY framework is a place where we think that this can show the integration and intersection of our work together. And this is then helping us really get clear and standardize on the ecosystem and the contributions that are being made, with Kentucky Bright Spots serving as our areas for scaling the work around successful practices that were just identified. There are also a couple of other key roles and partners for this work. The Children's Funding Project from 2022 and 23 provided a comprehensive fiscal mapping that is so important for us to, take into account. That helps us understand where we are investing, how much we're investing, what's making a difference or not. The Kentucky Center for Statistics is providing a needed early childhood integrated data system so that we can hold ourselves and have shared accountability for short and long-term goals. And working with Compass Evaluation is, again, allowing us to understand how different populations are responding to and reacting to many of the supports and work that's underway. Okay, so the next slide. So now we're going to turn with that, context, continued context that's important for us to set in all of our conversations. Now I'd love to turn and invite our partners to provide their updates. So Dr. Thomas Williams, would you start from the Kentucky Department of Education?
Letting down the people who need to see me most.
Dr. Cummings Smith, I'm going to jump in too, and we're going to do a little bit of a facilitated discussion. I welcome your thoughts and perspective too. As we talk with the partners, we just wanted to build upon what we've been doing the last couple of months, but specifically, we really dug in the last quarter meeting around the needs assessment and opportunities that these leaders saw from their space. And so, Dr. Williams, I'm going to pitch you a prompt. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So Dr. Cummings Smith just talked about the North Star, which is our logic model. And we wondered if you could tell us more about the Kentucky Department of Education's leadership team that they're pulling together or have pulled together, I think. And really the focus around positive behavior support and how that's going to really help us create a broad-based coalition of support. The Pyramid Model Consortium, can you talk about that?
I can. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. So again, as Amy stated here at the Kentucky Department of Education Office of Special Education and Early Learning, we're very happy to announce that we have, in collaboration with the Pyramid Model Consortium, created a state leadership team. Here at the department, we've been doing pyramid work for quite a while in regards to, and Pyramid Model is a research-based framework that uses early childhood practices to promote healthy social and emotional development for teachers, children, and families. And so we've been doing the pyramid model here at the department for quite a while. And we are happy that we are now the 41st state to become a state pyramid team. And so we have brought together different partners from different agencies to come together so we can scale back because the pyramid model is birth to age 5. And so we want to make sure that we're including all of our partners as we look at disseminating information and also looking at a cross sector to kind of see how we could elevate this model and bring the voices of all of the agencies to have a better Kentucky for our youngest learners.
Dr. Williams, I'm going to jump in and Rebecca is our timekeeper. So Rebecca, you keep us on point here, but we do like to, carve out time here for this. This is exactly what we want from our appointed advisory council members is, we want this dialogue. But Dr. Williams, you did say, I think you said scale back.
Yes, scale to
I
birth.
think I know what you meant, but can you just talk more about that?
Yeah, I can unpack that. So basically, again, at the department, we started with our public preschool programs, implementing and supporting the pyramid model. And so what I mean by scale back is to make sure that we're bringing, and we're starting at birth to age 5, as which the pyramid what it's called for, and that's why we're bringing all of our partners, childcare. We're bringing, our IHEs, the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, and those to be a part to kind of see how we can best provide a cross sector with all of the agencies to better promote and elevate the pyramid model across the state. We've had our first meeting. And we're looking at having hosting our second meeting. I believe that meeting will be in October. to continue the conversation. It's not a one and done conversation. It is an ongoing conversation with this state leadership team. And again, my team and I, we have brought together different agencies, and again, this is the beginning discussion. And so if we want to bring in other partners, we can definitely do that as well to add on to the state leadership team.
Very good. I see Dr. Bridges, your hand.
I just wanted, if you don't mind, if you could share again what the goal is of this group, the state level group.
Yeah, so for the universal principle, for this universal pyramid model, and the goal for the group is to come together to disseminate information across all of the agencies, and to bring in a cross sector and a conversation to see how we can include our birth through age 5 to make sure that we're all in alignment, and to support the social and emotional support for our youngest learners. Did I answer your question, Dr. Bridges?
I think so.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Feedback? Great.
And Amy, I would like to continue to update the advisory committee around the pyramid work, because one thing, as I look at a guiding question and how you all can, and how this group can support us, is how can ECAC support the statewide implementation pyramid model? So we do welcome your feedback in regards to rolling out this framework. And so again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And I can definitely provide more information around the pyramid model, but I would like to open to see if this can be an ongoing conversation, as we would like ECAC's support and feedback on how we can better promote this cross-sector initiative. Amy?
Well, I would just say that that's a given,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas, that when we work together in a data-driven fashion and we prioritize what works best, that's when we get to, long-term, like a sustainable
Absolutely.
change. And so that's why, frankly, and Lynn Baker is our, Head Start Collaboration Office Director. She's a member of this leadership team. We were invited to the meeting, and frankly, we got off the call and we were like, this really seems like a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Right? This seems like needs to be elevated. If this doesn't end up in the 5-year strategic plan, it seems as though something may be off kilter.
Mhm.
I mean, but that's, why we need this collective investment and conversation.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. So Dr. Williams, we will look to more updates from you as the implementation continues. Dr. Gilbert, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, I just had a question for Dr. Williams. What was the timeline that you're thinking about in terms of getting it out to the entire state of Kentucky?
So that's a great question. I think that's the benefit of having a state leadership team, is that this decision is not done in isolation, and that's more of a team decision in collaboration with the Pyramid Model Consortium. So that's kind of where we are, is that and the benefit of having that state leadership team.
And so, Dr. Williams, just to further elaborate, that means that the leadership team is really working on the timeline at this moment.
So again, this is the beginning stages. So we've only had one meeting. So with the Pyramid Model Consortium, what they've done is first bringing everyone's knowledge up to par. For those, everyone's coming from different places to kind of understand the model, and then we'll begin to start talking around timelines and how all of the agencies can come together to support this framework.
Very good. And I see Rena, your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Smith. Hi, Thomas.
Hey.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to ask if we have any idea how many school districts in Kentucky are already involved and invested in beginning to implement the pyramid model. I know Jefferson County Public Schools is very heavily invested, and we just had all our teachers trained actually. But I know it's a capacity building issue, and so I do see opportunities for collaboration, again, creating a unified system, collaboration within local communities between the public
Absolutely.
school district and childcare and other stakeholders in the community, with this particular technical assistance and training and building up of knowledge,
Yeah.
and improve, impacting practice. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So I do have data, but this data is changing, so it's not concrete data. So it may be changing actually, as I speak. But from what I know is that we do have in support again with our regional training centers, because our regional training centers have been instrumental with supporting the pyramid model. But we do have 29 districts across the state, 82 buildings, and 230 state-funded preschool classrooms who have already started this pyramid model. And again, those are the numbers that I have to date, but that could change by the end of the week. So, again, I do want to give a huge shout out, if I can, to our districts and also to our regional training centers who have really been instrumental with supporting the pyramid work and with the implementation of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amy?
Thanks. I just wanted to make a quick connection to a couple slides back. Dr. Cummings-Smith talked about our roadmap to get to our strategic plan, right? And I don't have it right in front of me, but said something to the effect of, we're going to use a dashboard, right? We're going to use a needs assessment, we're going to use environmental scan, we're going to use fiscal mapping, we're going to use outcome data. All of that information tied together to lead us to our strategic plan. So the information that Dr. Williams just shared, we have X number of schools implementing, and we invest X number of dollars. That's exactly why we are producing a first-time product for Kentucky in the form of an environmental scan. Not that we think we're going to be able to get everything, but for our first time, we're going to elevate what's going on out there that's really good. Well, this sounds like it, right? So where is it? How many? All those things. So we'll get to that soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And one other thing is that we have been able to fund pyramid coaches with each RTC. So each RTC currently has a pyramid coach, and those coaches were funded through our ARP dollars. And so we're very happy that we do have those coaches that are, boots on the ground and supporting our districts with this pyramid work.
Excellent. Great discussion. I'm going to move us to Andrea's update as well. And Andrea, just a softball prompt for you. Given the intersections of the READY framework, that the READY framework provides opportunities to standardize and unify the ecosystem and grow Kentucky's bright spots and promising practices. Can you bring into this conversation one or two strategies that the Division of Child Care invested in as a part of the the American Rescue Funds that you believe are key practices to examining and considering unpacking what we're doing related to strategic planning?
So just picking one is hard, or two even, because we did so many things with the ARPA dollars. But kind of to echo what Amy and Dr. Williams have been talking about is really that collaboration, the cross-sector collaboration. We all know that early childhood is fragmented. We are in our silos. We all have our different regulations that we have to follow, our funding guidelines we have to follow, and it all kind of gets messy. But we continue to have these conversations about how can we streamline this and simplify this. And talking about the pyramid model, state leadership team, you know, the Division of Child Care is there at the table, because what we're hearing nationally is that a lot of what happens, let's say in public preschool, that may be the rage in public preschool, but really childcare needs to be at the table, because a lot of those policies and best practices tend to trickle down. And so if it can touch all of early childhood and we can all take bits and pieces, we're going to maximize our efforts and our funding. So I think, again, I know I say this, I feel like every time we're together, but the collaboration is there, and we're actually sharing that information, realizing when we're not comparing apples to apples, and thinking creatively about how could we get there? What might we do? So that's one thing, not necessarily that was funded by ARPA dollars, but you know, our goal was to increase access and quality as well. So as you all know, we had a number of startup grants, and that was business partnership grants, childcare desert grants. When those ended, when those two things ended, we were like, we have some funds left over. How else could we invest these in communities? So we offered two new partnerships, two new grant opportunities, a community partnership that really was a community coming together, not one sole entity, to come together to create a new childcare. We awarded 5 of those. And then we also awarded 5 intergenerational care grants. And that was something that the leadership team that was selected by the Hunt Institute from Kentucky, we got to hear Tabitha Rossbroy last year. She came to ECI this year, but really talking about how can we think differently and bringing 2 of our most vulnerable populations together to where their partnership, those programs partnerships really has a social and emotional benefit to both age groups. And you know, those soft skills and those positive adult to child interactions. So those 2 grants, the community partnership and intergenerational care, while those have been awarded, I think we have one that has actually gotten up and running intergenerational care. We don't have any data to report yet, but we are hoping that those entities, that we can take their model and, as Amy likes to say, use that as a bright spot and really let them be a leader and a mentor to other groups that maybe their formula that they use, let's say in Boyle County, might not work in McGoffin, but what can we learn that's transferable? And again, getting people to think creatively and more innovatively outside the box while still maintaining health and safety and quality.
Excellent. Are there any questions or comments that we'd like to open up at this time? I'm most encouraged by that second part of the work that you mentioned. We, you know, did some learning with our guest speaker keynote last time and have really implemented that into action in the state. And I know that it's very early, Andrea, as you mentioned, but I'm really looking forward to the learnings that come from that so that we can continue to keep our group, you know, abreast of what's happening, but how in what ways we are putting action behind new learning that is also coming into the state. Others? Dr. Bridges.
I was just gonna ask Andrea, Dr. Williams. Andrea, you on the group that Dr. Williams mentioned?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, and I'm going to take a moment to brag on my team as well, because just this past week, there's a new initiative that's Sturdy Bridges to Kindergarten. And some of our staff somehow wound up on the webinar, but really thinking, you know, we've reached out to Dr. Williams and Bill to say, hey, is there room for us in this? Because it is an education-led initiative. But again, childcare plays such a critical role. How can we be a support? How can we make sure that we're including our childcare providers in that, because they play such a crucial role?
Great. Any other comments?
Before we move on, I also just want to let the group know that the last ARPA stabilization payment is going out to our childcare providers that started last week and this week. As you know, there were 9 quarterly payments. We allocated $49.6 million to each of those payments. The last payment was quite a bit larger because we had put 5% over for administrative fees, and we did not come close to touching that amount. So we had approximately 20 million extra dollars that we were able to put directly into the hands of those providers that have been eligible for those sustainability payments. And also that the governor announced a $50 million investment into childcare for another stabilization payment that will be issued in December to our childcare providers. One thing that we're still working out all the details and getting, our I's dotted and our T's crossed. But one of the things, we're making that available, that last stabilization payment that is going to be state funded, it's going to be available to more providers, because with the ARPA dollars, they had to be open and serving children as of March 11th of 2021. We've had approximately 200 providers open since then. And so we are including them in this dissemination of funds. We did open that up to make them eligible, as long as they have been serving children for the last 6 months as of June 30th of this year. That way it was, I know it's not necessarily equitable to the whole group, but at least we were able to make some funds available to those who had stepped up to that challenge to open new programs during some very trying times.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear, Andrea. Thank you for that update. And just the amount of resources coming in to providers is really an added value and benefit for organizations and providers helping children and families. Dr. Bridges.
Yes, I would just want Andrea, and it's exciting about those dollars, but I have talked to both sides of that funding. Those some directors who have planned how to continue whatever they started with those dollars over time, and then those who have been solely dependent on it, and they're like, we don't know what we're going to do. So I guess my question is, do you have something in place to provide some sort of assistance, whether it has to do with financial management, fiscal management, or any kind of strategies? Because some were like, we may have to close, but I'm only talking about the directors that I know.
Right. Well, and Dr. Bridges, that isn't just a Kentucky issue, that's a national issue. And that's what we're hearing at a lot of conferences that we have been attending, different members of our staff. As far as like stabilization funding, no, we are going to continue all the other ARPA projects that we started, which will continue through September 30th of 2024, like the scholarships, the child care income exclusion, and all of those things to help shore up and to provide some relief, if you will, relief as far as those are funds that we are using to help providers seek higher quality and have the best staff available. We're still going to try to continue to brainstorm. It is the $64,000 question, is what is next? And, that is at the forefront of everyone's mind. So that is something we're going to continue to chip away at and be creative.
I think, Andrea, to your point about being creative, that creates opportunities then to rethink how we make investments and into strategies and support. So I really appreciate that comment about, the importance of being creative, the opportunities that are ahead of us as a state. Great. Any other thoughts? Okay.
Okay, and this one really builds upon the last question, but Lynn Baker is our state's Head Start Office Collaboration Director. And Lynn, we know that delivering high quality, responsive early care and education starts with his professionals. We also know that we have a real teacher shortage. So can you tell us more about the work here in Kentucky, but specifically some of those strategies that we have embedded in the preschool development grant around retention and making progress toward the national model and then even advancement?
Yeah, so can you all hear me? We're sort of ping-ponging around in here in the same room, so I just wanted to make sure. But to Amy's point, we're going to talk a little bit about the talent pipeline management system and network that we're using for the early childhood sector here in a little bit. Dr. Jasek Gilbert we'll talk to that, but we know that there are clogs in the pipeline, and by pipeline we mean anything that feeds into any of our workforce in early childhood, whether they come from credentials, higher institutions of education, whether they're coming into the field and then learning. We know that there are clogs there. We know there's clogs in recruitment and retainment of highly qualified staff across all sectors. And there are certain aspects that we know contribute to this, but then we're still uncovering many. So again, Dr. Jasek Gilbert will speak to one of the preschool development strategies that we are implementing to address those clogs in that early childhood workforce pipeline in a moment when she shares. We're working alongside the Kentucky Chamber to launch the Talent Pipeline Management Early Care and Education Network, and that's looking towards solutions and strategies for recruitment and retention. In addition to the Talent Pipeline Management Early Care and Education Network, we're working with partners to update the Career Lattice. And we've shared before the importance of recognizing all pathways that feed into the early care and education pipeline. And to this end, we're working to align and simplify the Career Lattice to support all pathways, including education, experience, credentials, micro-credentials, our apprenticeship portfolio. And we've talked in the past about the importance of recognizing that a teacher is a teacher across all settings, just like we've talked about in the health field where a nurse is a nurse. So you may be a different credential or a different educated level of teacher depending on what environment you're working in. But we know those different settings may include different pathways for arriving at that place. And so it's important that we're working to professionalize the field, and we're recognizing all various ways that professionals land in those different early care and education settings. And so the work we're doing is really to align and simplify the Career Lattice. And this is going to guide us as we work towards strategies such as the Talent Pipeline Management Network and articulation agreements between systems, between educational opportunities, because we're trying to help build and recruit a stronger recruitment and retainment strategy across all of the early care and education workforce. So those are things that we're working on with Preschool Development Grant, that Career Lattice, making sure that we're including all of the things. As we know, our apprenticeship program is still growing and still pretty new. And so those pieces really need to align with that within our Career Lattice and within the national model that really looks at simplifying and not making it so complex that people are not able to follow along with that Career Lattice and really what it means toward driving our workforce in early care and education.
Very good, Lynn. Thank you for that response too. Are there any questions or thoughts, comments reflective of this? I know we're going to hear a little bit more about this from Dr. Gilbert in just a few minutes, but I want to open up the space at this time. If not, we're going to go ahead and go to Paula. Lynn, were you getting ready to add one last bit?
Yeah, I just wanted to to add, there's a little bit of data too that we know we are discovering as we're working through our needs assessment. Particularly, we've got some Head Start tools that have already been released on the compensation and benefits study from 2022. And that really shows that there's an average of 25% turnover in Head Start. That's just Head Start. And the majority of that turnover does not go on to any other early care and education experience. They usually leave the field of early childhood at that point. And so knowing those data points moving forward as we work through this, and I think as you hear Dr. Gilbert talk about the talent pipeline in a minute, I think it's important that we keep those data points in mind. And it's across all of early childhood. We know that retainment piece and compensation pieces are crucial to retaining the early childhood workforce. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that we know there's a lot of data coming our way that's really going to support this work.
Yes, excellent point. And I'm so glad you pushed the data to the center of that conversation. And we'll hear a little bit more later. Rena, I see your hand.
Yes, really quickly, this is all very exciting. So thank you for sharing this information. I know that there are communities such as mine in Louisville that are working towards proposals for a unified system and a mixed delivery model. And this information will be so helpful. Is there a place right now for the information that you just shared on the Career Lattice work, and also what JSOC is about to share, what Dr. Gilbert is about to share, that we can go to? I'm on the Mayor's Early Learning Action Group here in Louisville, and that information would be so beneficial to our group. So,
yeah, I think the needs assessment data will be forthcoming fairly soon. I think that's going to be very important to everyone's work, as you mentioned. I think that's crucial for moving the needle and moving forward and unclogging that pipeline, as we talked about. I will actually, when Dr. Gilbert talks about the Talent Pipeline Management Network, I will make sure that I add the pertinent information in the chat so that you're able to share with anyone who might want to attend. We do have 3 meetings coming up that she'll tell you about. And so we'll add the information in the chat for that coming up.
Excellent. Excellent. And Rena, thank you for demonstrating the way in which, communities are going to need to access the information from the needs assessment, as well as the environmental scan, but useful in making decisions at the local level. And having that readily available is going to be critical. So thank you so much for demonstrating that. Paula, I'm going to turn it to you. And I think we have one last kind of prompt for you to respond to. Over the past year, we've been learning and gathering a better understanding of our current landscape of developmental screening across the state. To operationalize this work, what do you believe needs to be prioritized? What are our watch outs? What do you think success needs to look like?
I think when we're thinking the developmental screening, I think really the big gap in developmental screenings, if you want to call it that, is the private sector. Publicly funded programs, such as our program with early intervention, the HANDS programs, those tend to have a built-in factor for developmental screening. We know lots and lots of developmental screening occurs with physicians, but the key there is getting that information from physicians to feed into somewhere, and a way for them to get that information very easily. With our Help Me Grow program, we've had quite a few learnings with that. Probably working with the private sector, the biggest thing that we have learned is that it's very complex when you think about what's the equipment someone may need on another end if you're going to try to do electronic, and you think about how to make it easy for families. Electronic screening is much easier to do an ASQ on the internet than to go and have someone interview you, but you're still going to have some people who may need that level of assistance. So the question comes down to, so then how do you get that electronic information? Do you have portals at places? We know childcare does quite a bit of developmental screening. They share that with parents, but does it go beyond from parents to physicians? those pieces and trying to link together everybody in a system where there's communication between all the parties that could support that child and family, depending upon that screening result. And I think too, the other piece that we learned is how critical it is to have resources for families because of that screening. Families that have children who screen within developmental limits, they're looking great. They still need that parent education, and they don't get that parent education unless they are in some type of parent education program. That's not something that's offered universally in Kentucky. Families in hands get it, but again, there's an age limit, there's eligibility. So there's a lot of people who miss that. Child's too old to refer to hands, those types of things. And then when you get up into the upper ages, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, it's kind of like that whole piece of parent education just kind of goes out into limbo. You'll see some schools, some childcare really try to address that to some degree, but it's a lot of anecdotal supports really that happen for families. And that's not a very secure support system. But what we've learned over time is that it really is that unified group. Our Kentucky Strengthening Families and our Family Thrive program really addresses not only those connections socially for families, but also that information about just child development. Is it reasonable to think their 5-year-old should be reading before they go to kindergarten? Those types of things. When they hear that the family, that the children are not ready for kindergarten, then they may, you've got some parents who start pulling out flashcards and really forcing their children to do things that developmentally their child cannot do. And it turns that child against learning. And we don't want that to happen either. And it's, again, good intentions of the family to support their child and make sure their child is learning. So I think that their developmental screening is a lot more complex than what I think sometimes people think it is. And it's all those loose ends that come out of it that causes that complexity. So as we've, our Help Me Grow program hasn't grown much because we haven't figured out those answers, as well as what's the support, where's the funding, how's this going to go long term, because it has to be sustainable as well. And that gets harder and harder to do. Start thinking outside the box. Is there a universal website of some sort for the state of Kentucky where they can go in and do developmental screening and it's easy to access, et cetera? And then depending upon what a family may give consent to how that can be shared, it could go to other parties, or they have some way to link to resources. Help Me Grow, the program out in Missouri that they have, Parent Link, you link up to a warm body and you have that warm handoff. That's an expensive program. When you start adding in the people, that adds up the cost. But, on one hand, it's very, very lucrative, it's very appealing, and it's very supportive to parents to have that voice on the other end of the phone helping you. So there's still a lot of hurdles to figure out with developmental screening on a universal basis, but it certainly is a very valid goal to try to achieve.
Great. Thank you, Paula. The note that you've made about what happens when you add different components to this work and how costs shift, is just another reminder of how we need to think about sustainability, how we need to think about, what investments we're making, when, and how, more importantly, we make this easier for families so that they can have the greatest access and opportunities. Amy, I see your hand, and I know we might be running a little bit behind
Yeah,
time,
and that was
so-
the only flag I'm getting from my team is we're
Okay.
minutes behind, but this is what the group loves is this discussion. So, but we are 15 minutes behind. So just so we're aware, we've got a couple more reports, we've got a vote, and we just want to make sure we get people out on time. That's it.
So with that, I'm going to ask Jae-Suk, you're going to have the last word on this topic, and then we're going to move to our next one.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for others who didn't get, so thank you for this opportunity. Just a couple of comments I wanted to say. I wanted to echo what Paula saying that having a universal database system would be wonderful. But I think with the Missouri model is really great, but it is costly, as you say, having the live person. I think we can think a little bit of what do we currently have? Like we've been talking about what currently exists, what are the communities, what are resources, and like that, different data dashboards and sort of trying to align everything. So one way I think is thinking about the regional collaboratives that's already there. Many of the regional collaboratives are doing developmental screening, and it's not just doing the screening, but it's also adding that other layer that you're saying, the parent education, the training, so it's done properly. It's also doing it not only for those who are at risk, but also who are on target. What can you then do to continue to help them improve and facilitate their development and learning? So I think that piece can be, as long as we can kind of take the Help Me Grow, because it is wonderful as it is, but trying to expand that, allow for that expansion where then it can link to the regional collaborative efforts and making that like the bright spot in terms of how do we unify all this and having a consistent sort of framework so that the regional collaboratives can do X, Y, Z. So whoever is doing it, when they hook onto the Help Me Grow, so it's not just the hands and, the Kentucky Early Intervention System and state-funded preschools are doing it so that it's more consistent. So that was just what I wanted to say. Thank you, though.
Great. Thank you for the contributions. I think all those points are right on. And as we continue to learn together, I think many of those options are great points for us to consider moving forward. So I'm going to move us on the agenda to our progress updates for our preschool development grant. And I know that on the next slide, you will see we have multiple required activities, and one bonus activity. And I believe, Amy, we've designed these next few minutes for a couple of folks to share out a little bit about the progress that's going on in these work groups. I am going to yield, knowing that the National Center for Families Learning is intimately involved in priority 3, but because my voice is pretty dominant in facilitation of this committee, I thought it would be great if we could hear from another colleague that is on that committee. That committee meeting, work group meeting went extremely well. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Gregory to bring his voice into our discussion and share a couple of highlights from the work group.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Certainly feel grateful to have this opportunity to be here. Just really quickly, I want to talk about the basic and the foundational components of a adult education in Kentucky. So we're going to go statutory. So what does the federal law say with respect to adult education? Now, let me shape this with it is adult so education and family literacy. That is the full and complete definition. So what does the federal law state? It states that a primary component is to better assist parents and family members to support their children's learning needs. Learning needs. So what does that look like? What does that look like? So that looks like helping them to become the primary teacher for their children and full partners in the education of their children. That is the bottom line up front. Now, I recognize that we have some significant programs, and that is outstanding. But I think we should transition to being in the business of a lifestyle of lifelong learning that programs can supplement, because the parents have to be the primary teacher. There is no way to matriculate the children to kindergarten and beyond without bringing the family and the parents. So that's where adult education comes in. So this is at no cost. And let me be clear, this is more than just assisting working age Kentuckians to get a GED. That is a significant component of what we do, but that is not the complete picture. Family literacy is a significant component of what we do. So when we break this down, there are specific high need counties in Kentucky. So when we look at those folks that have not completed the high school process, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we are talking about working age Kentuckians, which is approximately 2.7 million folks. And almost 12% of those have not completed the high school process. So we're looking at 300,000 people. And from a high need standpoint, there are 21 counties that we classify as high need counties, which means that 50% of the individuals who have not completed the high school process reside in these 50 counties, and they touch every corner of the state from Kenton, which is up north, to Central, which is Jefferson County, way out west in Christian County, way out east and Pike. So it touches the full spectrum of the Commonwealth. So what is the bottom line up front? Adult education is a dedicated partner in this process because we have services, programs, and activities at no cost to Kentuckians that will raise the literacy level of parents and families, which will facilitate these children as they matriculate from 0 to 5 into kindergarten and beyond. So that's where we are. That's what we do. And I say this again, intentionally, at no cost to Kentuckians. That is a major source of the preparation and the education and the training for parents, which can feed into their children. So that is why we are a dedicated partner in this process, and we are extraordinarily happy to be here. So thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity.
Excellent. Excellent. I think as you can hear the comments from Dr. Gregory's office and orientation to his contributions and his office's contributions to this work, you can hear a deeper sense of alignment, ways in which we need to strengthen the system, ways in which we need to strengthen and provide greater access and opportunities, especially from those that are farthest from opportunity across the state. Excellent. Let's go next to the talent pipeline management system. Jae-Suk, you're going to provide a few minutes of update for us from that required activity from the preschool development grant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Smith. So I'll keep this brief. So we were just sort of listening and hearing and finding more about the Ready Families component, right, when you're thinking about school. And now this activity, even it's focusing on workforce. So it's Ready Communities, broadly speaking, because we're talking about all of the sectors that are in childcare that are working with children. As Dr. Gregory said, it's also working with the families and partnering and collaboration as well. So with the workforce framework, if you remember from prior sessions, there are 3 buckets, and one is growing the pipeline, the other one's accelerated path to professional advancement, and the third one is retaining high quality educators. So this talent pipeline management system really kind of focuses more on one of those priorities more so, which is the growing the pipeline. It's really, we want to figure out how do we recruit more of that supporting recruitment effort, although it may end up with addressing some of those other buckets as well. And so the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, Lynn already alluded to it, and Amy, the whole office have been working very diligently alongside with Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. And the outcome of that collaboration and hard work is the Talent Pipeline Management Early Care and Education Employer Network. And so what happened was they have a similar model in the healthcare. And, so then it seems like if you already have it and we don't have it for our sector, let's go ahead and get it going. So the Talent Pipeline Management Network is an employer-led framework. So it's basically the employers come together to address what are the barriers or the needs, what are they facing in terms of talent supply chains. So the goal is really to unify all of the employers so that they actually have a one voice, it's a unified industry voice. So you can raise awareness for the career opportunities and also create, like Lynn talked about, the lattice, right? So when we're talking about that, there has to be scalable talent pipelines so that it is applicable and it can help the early childhood education industry, especially we already know it's fragmented. So this will help in terms of that. And there's no cost. We heard that it's free. There's no cost to employers, and it's systematic approach to do it. And Lynn, as she said, she'll put in the chat. So there are 3 subgroups right now. So that way you would have individual, more focused time to kind of identify what might be those clogs, as Lynn kind of talked about. And so they have as you saw in the chat, we actually have one for the state funded preschool. We also have one group for the Head Start, early Head Start group. And we also have one for the childcare, family childcare, broadly speaking. So it's the community of all of the adults in the outside the home arena. And so they have different dates and times, and it's Zoom meetings. And originally the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce actually did a webinar, and the attendance rate was really great. And they informed everybody in terms of about over 100 participants actually attended that informational webinar that kind of gave more information on that. And then they invited people to participate. Again, it's free. You do have to register though, because they need to have some confirmation, and then they'll get the link for that. Now, if you belong to more than, or if you're interested in more than one subgroup, you're more than welcome to sign up for all 3 if you like. But like, I'm going to choose the childcare, family childcare one first, although I want to be in all of them. And then I want to kind of go from there, because what's the beauty of this is that each subgroup will kind of come up with and identify and kind of form the direction. But then there will be quarterly, they'll get together so that you will have all of them. So even if you can't attend all of them, you will still get the opportunity to hear. So you get the unified alignment of the efforts. So we know that there's recruitment and retention issues with all of them. But in terms of how we go about solving or about potential solutions or strategies might be a little bit different. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can obviously contact Lynn, who is the director of this whole thing.
Excellent.
Dr. Smith, Cumming Smith asked if it would be recorded, and it will be. And also, I just wanted to reiterate that the links that I put in the chat are for the registration. So if folks go that route and they register, they will get another link to attend whichever of the 3, if not all 3, meetings that they want to choose.
Very good. Thank you, Lynn. Very good.
And I just wanted to say, please send it out to everybody you know so they can get involved. But also for all of us, like I'm attending one and I'm going to attend the other parts. But I think all of us, if we're interested, it'd be good for us to kind of get the FII and be in the loop as well.
Yes, I think that's an excellent point, just so that we can make sure we stay abreast of those conversations and how that's impacting the work ahead. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Jae-Suk, for that update. Let's go to required activity number 5, which is focused on support and quality improvement. And I believe, Rena, you're going to bring us an update for that required activity.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I will also try to make this as brief as possible, try to buy us some time back. So one of our deliverables is that Kentucky will implement a statewide enhanced and coordinated mixed delivery system. And the federal definition of that mixed delivery system is all from birth through 5, early childhood and early intervention services. So everything that we have talked about, all the stakeholders that we are talking about, and ensuring that we have high quality practices that are highlighted, reinforced, and replicated statewide. So you heard Dr. Cummings Smith earlier talk about our bright spots, and you know, we have lots and lots of new strategies that have been shared here, and all of those are practices that we want to support and continue to elevate and scale out and up. So one of the strategies that the Governor's Office of Early Childhood is engaged in is partnering with the organization called Partners for Rural Impact, based out of Berea, Kentucky. And their work is really solid and aligned with the outcomes that we are looking for. And really they are about accelerating those educational outcomes in what they call their priority zone. It's the rural areas in Kentucky. And so the Governor's Office is engaging with them in refining our 3-year plan, looking at our outcomes and our measurables. And so it will be a co-design relationship, and it will focus on the very things that we articulated at the beginning of the work of the Governor's Office with the preschool development planning grant. If you will recall, we had an evaluation in 2018, the one evaluation in 2018 that said we do a lot of wonderful collaboration, and however, we want to see the long-term impact. What is the long-term impact? So the work of this iteration of the process has been really focused on driving home that long-term impact. So this new collaboration will also really focus on making sure we elevate the local needs, the identified and ongoing local needs, and that we again continue to reinforce the work of the regional collaboratives, the regional collaborative network, in pivoting away from one-day activities or short-term activities to really long-term behavior change and impact in our communities. So again, this is also about strengthening and readying communities, right? So our regional collaborative networks are making measurable progress as a result of our change in our grant process. We are really shaping that work towards measurable progress and locally shared results in that process. So a priority will be to have parallel learning tracks of learning opportunities to strengthen leadership, to strengthen members of the cohort in the work that they have identified in their local communities. So in other words, we want to continue to strengthen and capitalize on new learning to improve their existing portfolio of work. So we're building both individual capacity of members as well as collective capacity. And as far as how that is all going to play out, that is still in the works in terms of identifying the cohorts that both the GOEC and the Partners for Rural Impact will be working with to strengthen the leadership skills and the capacity to really realize their local goals, to be results driven, to be data driven, to be instruments of change in their community, to address any gaps in equity opportunities, and to continue those collaborative efforts. So we're really excited about this partnership, this new partnership, and we know that it will continue to support that deliverable of enhancing the coordinated system in the early childhood ecospace in Kentucky. So I will stop there.
Great. Thank you, Rena. I continue to hear across our updates, this work is emerging. We're taking advantage of learning. We're also thinking in alignment and coordination, enhancement of our regional collaboratives as a network who can provide the necessary supports as we pay close attention to the needs in local communities. So I really appreciate that update from the required activity number 5. We have 2 more, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thomas Williams for the required activity number 6, focused on strategies to enhance quality and access.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And so with this activity 6, I'm very limited as to what I can say because this is a competitive grant. But what I can say is that we're excited that we are moving forward with the Preschool Quality Partnership Grant. And the grant is designed to increase the availability of full-day, year-round, high-quality preschool services in their communities. So we're very happy to announce that. And so once new grants are awarded, we would then put together develop a action plan. This may include a grantee orientation session, monthly or quarterly, webinar conferences, calls featuring topics of interest to grantees. So again, hopefully, when I return, I will be able to speak more around the grants. But what I can say is that we are moving forward with ensuring that these grants are ready to be submitted, ready to be public facing, and ready for those to apply for this opportunity.
Great. And did you say that the request is already out there and everyone is aware of it and you all are waiting for submissions?
Yeah, not yet. So we're working right now with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood just to make sure that all the components are included, and also working with our finance office to make sure that we are including everything that needs to be submitted on our end. But once that information has been gathered and has been approved, then it will be ready for public facing and ready for those to apply for those grants.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, let's go to our bonus activity. I'm sorry, Amy.
Well, if we're okay, I mean, the meeting, we runs actually until 3. If we're okay, I mean, that is the time slotted. If not, I won't jump in, but I know when we spoke earlier, we really wanted to make the connection here with increasing access and quality and the opportunities around universal pre-K. So if there's time, I'll make that connection. If not, we can move forward.
We are good. Keep going, Amy, please.
Okay, we've got a couple people saying that they've got to jump off at 2:45. So we'll just make sure that we get to that vote before 2:45. So just, again, there are several folks who are on that early childhood work group that the Lieutenant Governor convened. You all may remember that in March, we heard from Dr. Ellis, and it is connected to the Commonwealth Education Continuum. And it really, the intent was around how does Kentucky define universal preschool? How will we implement, because it is a goal of the administration to increase access and quality. Again, anybody else who has been engaged in that task force, please feel free to jump in, but just a couple of things. Connection to Dr. Williams' report. It's the reason we were so intentional about working with Amy Smith on this strategy as we develop the grant. It's a bright spot. And Kentucky has been investing in this strategy under a lot of different names, Preschool Partnership Grant and others. Dr. Gilbert has been the evaluator, and we know that when children have access to high quality, full day, year-round care, they show up for kindergarten better prepared. So this is our moment to really accelerate and activate this existing strategy. But in this task force, we've really lasered in on stakeholder feedback and, what other states are doing. We've even looked at governance structure, but we've had the education continuum of the states there as a sort of expert facilitator. And it's been a really great experience they've been involved in. If there's anybody else that's been engaged, if you want to add, go right ahead until we get cut off.
So I'll jump in, Amy, and just kind of piggyback off of, what you said. I think it's a great opportunity to bring everyone around the table to kind of talk around what universal preschool looks like, and to also look at research and to look at what other states are doing in regards to, number one, concerns, right? Because there are, a few concerns, and also seeing how we can work together in order to move universal preschool forward. So I am very happy to be a part of this group, to add my voice to universal preschool and how that may look in Kentucky.
Great. Any other feedback, thoughts, input from the group? Well, I know estates are making steady progress around universal pre-K. There is a lot for us to learn, and I'm sure the task force is taking a lot of that up, and glad to see and hear that information coming into this conversation, so that it is one, coordinated, comprehensive conversation, and we're sharing learnings all across the different discussions that are underway. Dr. Williams, I see your hand.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing. Sorry, Dr.
Great. No, that's great.
But I do want to add, which I think is extremely important, is that we have elevated voices from our stakeholders. So on the KDE side, we have spoken with our preschool coordinators to kind of talk about what this may look like, any concerns that they may have. So, again, we have those that are sitting around the table, but we are elevating the voices from those who are on the ground doing the work.
Very important addition, because in places where this is not going so well, we're hearing that the voices of those that are actually, having to implement, those voices are not a part of it. So thank you, Dr. Williams, for bringing that front and center into this conversation and sharing how that's happening here in Kentucky as we get out ahead of that. Excellent. Any other thoughts? Okay, I'm going to move us on to Dr. Berry to share with us a little bit about our bonus activity with the Kentucky Center for Statistics. So Matt, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I think I know most folks on the call, but just in case I don't know, I'm Matt Berry. I'm the executive director at the Kentucky Center for Statistics, or KY Stats. We house the longitudinal data system and labor market information office for the state. So I'm a little bit of the odd duck here in terms of the office, but we try to support everyone we can. So that's why I'm here. I'm particularly here because we work really closely with GOEC and Amy's office on a lot of different work. So we produce the early childhood profile on an annual basis together, which is kind of the thing we've done together, I think, for the longest period of time. And we've worked on the previous PDG grant, and we are I think we play a key role. I hope we will. We've been written in as such in this last round, so we better play a key role since we're in there like that. So we are at the table helping to inform this really important work. I'm obviously talking today about the progress made on the bonus activity, which is the coordinated application, eligibility, and enrollment. With really the goal to increase utilization of services, or coordinated enrollment is, I think, the easiest way to say it. Really, to date, the GOEC's worked really closely with CHFS, or Cabinet for Health and Family Services leadership, just to really better understand and do some work around understanding the existing plan and priorities, and that's within the Connect system, and where there are opportunities to identify and fill those gaps that might exist within that current system. Particularly to the birth to 5 space, since we're talking in the PDG context here. And with the goal, again, being a larger number of families and caregivers and affiliated partners using the Connect system. So after that update, some of you all might be wondering why I'm giving that part of the update, since it's a CHFS and GOEC progress update. It actually really aligns well, that type of work really aligns well with what KY Stats, I think, the role that we will be playing and should be playing in this work. Really, the way I think of it is similar to what we try to do in a lot of the work we do, but really particularly to PDG is, and Amy and I have had a lot of conversations about this. She mentioned at the front end of this meeting, we helped lead a committee that has sort of identified priorities around this identification of bright spots and this integrated early childhood data system. So really that's the type of work that I think we'll be doing, which is similar to this or aligned with this bonus activity, which is finding where there are gaps. So doing some really stringent processes, whether it be some crosswalking and programming, or landscape analyses to identify gaps, and then which existing resources might be used to fill those gaps. But really, it is about sort of implementing the processes to better understand the current landscape, and I think that's what's happening under this priority. Eventually, that will ideally be used to sort of monitor continuous improvement and accelerate and activate these existing strategies, which we hope will be the ones that work best. And so that's kind of where we're headed in the future as it relates to this activity. And I think I'll go ahead and pause there, and because I'm trying to be brief also, I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions for me.
I don't see any, but Jay Stuck.
Sorry, I have
That's
just
okay.
one question, and it might be way down, but since you talked about Connect, and that's getting at some population and information we definitely need. But in terms of this, it's increasing utilization and coordinating all of it. I know we've had this conversation some time ago, but is there thinking and plan or something about really aligning the different database system, because we still have the existing so many different database systems, and we talked about Help Me Grow as one, but that is so key if you think about what the regional collaborative, what the families need in terms of sort of being able to facilitate development and taking a more active role, and that really sets them up for school readiness, getting them into the right intervention. So not so much there's other pieces, easy trust, all that, but just like Kentucky Help Me Grow, is there a thought of sort of being able to where systems can communicate and sort of have that one unified system, at least in that aspect?
Yeah, so I'll answer it from the kind of the big picture perspective, and then if there are pieces that GOEC wants to fill in, please, Amy, please feel free. But in terms of coordination of these data systems, that's one of the really key, I think, priorities that came out of the committee that Amy was referring to, which is, and I think a lot of us knew this, but sometimes it's good to do the work to identify it more clearly. There are disparate systems in this space that are not talking to each other currently. And so, I want to be clear that when I'm speaking, just because I'm representing KY Stats here, it is not the thought process that KY Stats would fill that role. That's not what I'm not sort of stating that we'll step in and do that. What I'm saying is, I think that we as the data experts in the state will certainly be at the table to help facilitate those conversations because it has been identified as a clear need. And Amy, I don't know if you want to, I see your hands up. I don't know if you want to fill in any specifics on that.
All I was going to say is that, I learned this a long time ago. Data will only make you ask more questions. So this is going to be a great conversation. I just wonder if we can just pause on this, if we can shift to the proposal and vote in case people have to fall off, and then we can circle back to this.
I think that's an excellent point. And I do think, Dr. Gilbert, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. So your question that you asked is likely to be something that we're going to continue to return back to. Matt, thank you for that update. And you're not an oddball out. We suspect we'll be seeing a lot more of you over the next few years. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Amy to really get us to the next slide to focus on our vote that we need to take today. And just as a reminder, we'll need everyone to come on video in order to take our vote. Amy.
Okay, so speed reader. So, as you all will remember, during our last meeting, we voted on surplus dollars from tobacco settlement. And we did receive some feedback on that. And we were asked to really refocus that on workforce, which is really not surprising of the discussion we've had today. But we have prepared this proposal today for your review for the surplus dollars, the 2.9 million. And they include the following around growing the pipeline. And here it is, I'm sorry. Growing the pipeline, so expanding the apprenticeship strategy, scholarships for public pre-K, childcare, and Head Start, testing, pilot testing, micro-credentialing opportunities. You know, how effective are incentives to complete badges to increase education across content areas? And then the last one for accelerating its advancement is around learning and options for master practitioners through upscaling.
So at this time, do we have a motion to accept the proposal?
So moved, Beth Brindley.
Very good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Dr. Williams, thank you. Any discussion? Let's take our vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 I,
Those opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you for everyone. I know this is right at the end of our meeting, but thank you for hanging in there with us to accomplish this vote. Amy, next.
I was just going to say, if we needed to circle back, I did not want at all Dr. Gilbert to feel as if she got cut off. So before, you know, we say our thank yous, next slide, please. If we want to at all, you know, Dr. Berry was sort of mid-sentence when I raised my hand. So if we want to finish up, you know, Felicia, you did say this is an ongoing conversation. You know, I say to the team often, if it were easy, it would already be done. But Jasuk, you do know you all are really leading the way in developmental screening in Northern Kentucky, and your regional collaborative has done some brilliant work. And so the landscape analysis that we've been able to do to really capture what's going on in Kentucky will guide this work. It will guide this work. So more to come on that. But I want to make sure that you feel like your voice was heard, and that Dr. Berry, your voice too.
Yes, thank you.
Very good. So as we know, as we draw to an end of our meeting today, I just want to remind everyone about our next meeting, which is scheduled for December 21st. Today's meeting has been extremely insightful and supportive of the work and objectives of this committee. And I can't thank everyone enough who sits on this advisory council for prioritizing the work. You've heard quite a bit of how we are aligning and coordinating and promoting collectively to see a different results for our youngest children in the Commonwealth and their families. And so just as a reminder, you know, one of the things that I was most impressed by today's discussion is our emphasis and our focus on the work of our Kentucky Regional Collaborative Network. And I just want to bring that back into this part of the conversation. The work that's happening there, the contributions that we know are current, but also soon to be, really, as deep implementers in this work. So thank you to everyone who sits on the council. If there are no further points of discussion, I'm just going to call for our meeting to be adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
We appreciate you.
Goodbye,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Bye.